Well, joining me now, Israeli journalist Emily Schrader. Emily, thank you so much for joining me. Absolutely disgusting behaviour. That's what I think, anyway. What are your thoughts on what should happen next with regard to the BBC and also Glastonbury?
Well, I would like to say that I'm surprised, but I have to say, given the fact that there were protests against Israel on October 8th in the UK, as well as in other countries, before Israel had responded to anything that happened on October 7th, I'm really not surprised to see this level of hatred. I think that it's been normalized over many, many months. And while criticism of Israel may be legitimate, what we're seeing isn't criticism of Israel from these protests. And that's been very clear from day one. You had someone just a few moments ago mentioning this, but the fact that this took place, given the fact that we're even in a war today where there are still hostages being held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip because of what they did on October 7th, which was invade Israel's sovereign borders, take over a music festival by parachuting in, kidnap, rape, and kill people, including by tying them to trees, both men and women. There were people who were killed while being raped, according to eyewitness testimonies. And all of this was because they went to a music festival to celebrate. And by the way, these were, of course, not just Israelis who were at this festival. So the fact that a music festival of all places that should be promoting unity, tolerance, respect, that this is now being used to normalize essentially calls to mass killing or even genocide simply because you don't like a country's politics, it's absolutely outrageous. And there need to be consequences, severe consequences, both for Glastonbury, for this band, and for the BBC. One more thing I want to add, Glastonbury knew. They knew because there was controversy over the band Kneecap, who also performed, because they previously expressed explicit support for terrorism, including by waving the flag of Hezbollah, a recognized terrorist organization. And so the fact that they just didn't know that something like this might happen is outrageous, and they need to be held accountable.
Hold on. I mean, Glastonbury probably wouldn't have known what this guy was going to be chanting on the stage, so we can't hold them responsible for what comes out of his mouth. He should be held responsible for what comes out of his mouth. But I will say that there were pro-Palestine or Palestine benches and all that sort of thing within Glastonbury, so that must have been placed there by an organisation or the organisers. Now, I understand Glastonbury is political, but they have to take into account, what about the Jewish people who would have attended that? What about the Israelis going to that festival? Where do they hide now? Where do they go whilst people are chanting death to the IDF and whilst there are pro-Palestine benches everywhere? I think it's just utterly... I find it very weird that this kind of thing is just being normalised, as you said.
It definitely is. I mean, it's extremely disturbing. As I said, political criticism is one thing, criticism of an army, all of those things are legitimate, but to be chanting in the thousands death to a mandatory draft military, by the way, for the sake of Israel's survival, it's outrageous. It's really, really outrageous. And you said Glastonbury can't be held accountable. I agree they can't be held accountable for those exact words. But as an organizer of a music festival, this isn't the first time incidents like this have happened, including with the bullying of Israeli and or Jewish participants in these festivals. And they need to be aware of what's happening right now. I think it's really disgusting that these no-name musicians are using this conflict, this bloody conflict, to try to make a name for themselves. In a way, it's sort of a self-promotion in order to say, oh, look at me, here I am involved in a hot-button political issue at the expense of the Jewish community. It's really, really repulsive, again, against everything that music festivals should stand for. And there needs to be some sort of consequences so that this type of behavior, this type of normalization of hate speech is actually deterred.
Well, I don't think he's intelligent enough to have crafted this specifically for his own PR, because if he had thought about it, he'd realise that that probably isn't the way to move forward. But there does seem to be this odd cult that seems to promote this thing that is happening, which is ultimately this vindictiveness and this hate towards Israel and Jewish people, when at the end of the day, the reality is that Hamas are a terrorist organisation who have not only terrorised their own country, but have been their own people, but have been terrorising the people in Israel as well. And they're a proxy of Iran, as we well know.
Absolutely. I mean, you're completely right about Hamas and about it being a proxy of the Islamic Republic. And I just want to say that if Hamas was given the opportunity, or the Islamic regime, to do what they did against Israeli citizens on October 7th at Glastonbury, I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't hesitate to take such brutal actions in the first place. This is the ideology behind what we're talking about. And so to see thousands of people chanting for this, it just breaks my heart as an Israeli and as a human being in general. It's really, really painful to watch this. And it should be to any person of conscience. This is not the path forward. And mind you, the other people who are being killed right now by Hamas are other Palestinians. This is not a terror organization that is acting in the interest of the Palestinian people at all. They never have been, even prior to October 7th. And so anyone who thinks that this is even remotely pro-Palestinian is inherently wrong to begin with.
Well, they didn't care who they killed on October the 7th, and it wasn't just Israelis. So I completely take you at your word for that. Emily, thank you very much. That's Emily Schrader. She's an Israeli journalist.